Welcome to the 2020 Buckeye Book Fair. Thank you for joining us for this series of virtual events with Ohio authors and illustrators. The Buckeye Book Fair provides an annual celebration of literacy through author visits, educational programs for K through 12 students, and events for people of all ages. All of the books featured today and throughout the entire Buckeye Book Fair are available for purchase at buckeyebookfair.org. Should you have any questions for the presenters, please click on the Q&A button and type them in the window that appears, and they'll be answered later in the session. Hello, and welcome to the 2020 Buckeye Book Fair Author-to-Author Cozy Mystery Writers Chat Session. My name is Russell Cross, one of the board members for the book fair, and my role tonight is to introduce our panelists. Bree Baker is one of many pen names of Kent author Julie Ann Lindsay, and she's a member of the International Thriller Writers, Sisters in Crime, and Romance Writers of America. In her newest mystery, A Call for Kelp, a formerly famous actress who has been hired to appear in a documentary about bees turns up dead. Stephanie Cole is an active member of the mystery writing community and a co-founder of the Northeast Ohio chapter of Sisters in Crime. Al dente's Inferno is the first in a new Tuscan cooking school mystery series, which introduces the character of American chef Nell Valenti, who is invited to establish a cooking school in Tuscany, but finds both minestrone and murder on the menu. Abby Collette was born and raised in Cleveland and spends her time writing, facilitating writing workshops at local libraries, and hanging out with her grandchildren. Her latest book, A Deadly Inside Scoop, focuses on Bronwyn Cruz, the owner of Cruz Creamery, an ice cream shop in Chagrin Falls, and the discovery of a body outside the store on the day of its official opening. Amanda Flower is a US Today best-selling and Agatha Award-winning author. Marshmallow Malice is the fifth in her Amish candy shop series and follows the adventures of Bailey King, a chocolatier and candy maker who combines her love of confectionery with amateur sleuthing. As well as being a seasoned author, Kylie Logan has worked as a journalist and writing teacher. In The Secret of Bones, Kylie tells the story of Jazz Ramsey, a cadaver dog handler who, while training a new dog called Luther, comes across the body of a former colleague. So now let's go to our moderator for the evening, Amanda Flower, who has the first question for our cozy panelists.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
Hi. We are all so happy to be here and participate in the Buckeye Book Fair. We have all been there in person, and we wish that we were in person there well, I guess it would have been last weekend to see you. But as everyone knows, that's not possible in 2020, the interesting 2020 that we're living in. So this is pretty great for us to have this opportunity to hang out with each other. We all are all friends and we know each other and we all write in the same subgenre. So I'm just honored to be the moderator here with my writer buddies. It's really an honor. So let's just jump right into it. That was a lovely introduction. I had asked you all to introduce and pitch your first books, but he did the work for us, right? So let's go ahead and skip that question because we don't want to waste time and repeat ourselves. So I hope you guys see the same order of people because I'll probably go down the line for the most part. But you might not see the same order because I think it's based on who's talking. So I'll call your name as we answer questions so that we know who should talk. And that way, everyone gets the time to say what they need to say. But my first question is, and I'll start with Stephanie, what does cozy mean to you?
What does cozy mean to me? Well, I can answer that as a writer and as a reader, but I'll start with as a writer and we'll see where it goes. Pretty much, I think, although the term cozy is rather broad, I'm thinking we can probably all agree on the fact that it's a traditional amateur sleuth mystery, but it tends not to have any gratuitous violence. The murder often occurs off screen. You pretty much don't care who gets killed because it's an odious human. And there's very little in the way of actual violence. The sex often occurs off screen too. It's kind of low on profanity. For me, all that comes down to is I feel safe in the hands of the writer. And that writer is building a community that presumably I'm going to enjoy revisiting time and again. So there's something very comfortable about it, and yet it still gives me the jazz of trying to figure out a crime.
Okay, Bree, or also known Julie Ann Lindsay, so she has multiple names. So if you have more than one name, please take the opportunity. And Stephanie also writes as Shelley Costa. But take the opportunity to tell us your multiple names so that they can get all your books, no matter who writes it. So do you have anything to add to that, Bree?
Yay. I thought Shelley did a great job. When I first started talking about cozies with friends, because I just found them and started reading them, we all kind of agreed that reading cozies are like sitting down with an old friend and getting caught up, saying, what have you been up to? And just hearing this magnificent story. I thought that was such a great way that Shelley said, you're safe in the hands of a cozy. I love that. That pretty much sums it up, because I was just talking to these girls earlier, and I read for an escape when things get stressful, and cozies tend to be lighthearted. They might make you, they should make you smile, and they often make you laugh, and they give you this other family, this other world. They're just a great place to just go hang out and just breathe and get ready to come back and do the real world stuff again. So I've been reading lots of cozies in 2020.
Funny.
My other pen names, so my name is Julie Ann Lindsay, and I write the Cider Shop Mysteries. As Bree Baker, I write the Seaside Cafe Mysteries. I've written the Kitty Couture Mysteries as Julie Chase, although that's kind of slowed down. I don't know what's happening with that. And I also write the Christmas Tree Farm Mysteries as Jacqueline Frost.
So busy, very busy. That's great. Abby, do you have anything that you'd like to add to the cozy description?
Well, I think that Bree and Stephanie said pretty much. I always add, that it's fun and it's light and it's funny as it can be with murder, because there's always a murder included. So if you can kind of picture really enjoying a read and laughing and, smiling when you close the book at the end, satisfied, but have delved into a murder. I think that's what cozy is. And I think, everyone likes that maybe sit on the edge of your seat a little kind of read. And you can get that from a cozy, but it's also not anything where, while you're reading it, you're tense or there's the drama with it. So. And I also write as Abby Vandiver. I've self-published some books under there, but I also with Henry Press have a series. It's called the Romaine Wilder Mystery Series. So,
okay, great. And then Kylie /Lucy Ness / she's also Casey Daniels has written more cozies than probably all of us combined. So what can you tell us that'll?
Well, I think I can combine what you asked about, Amanda, which was our various pen names. And at the moment for this Buckeye Book Fair, I'm two people. I'm Kylie Logan and I'm Lucy Ness this year. But talking about what is a cozy and what is not a cozy, I think I can sort of give a demo.
A visual, yeah.
The Kylie Logan books, The Secrets of Bones, is the second book in the Jazz Ramsey mystery series. And this is what's considered traditional mystery. it's more grounded in reality than a cozy mystery. Lucy Ness writes cozy mysteries. I don't know if you can see the cover, but there's a ghost on that cover. So that's telling you right there that things are a little strange, a little out of thing. I think cozy has more of an element of fantasy in it than a traditional mystery, because you've got an amateur sleuth who is basically waking up one day and saying, come on, kids, let's put on a show. You know, I'm going to go solve a murder. And in things like cozies, that's pretty much what happens. Whereas in a traditional mystery, I think the sleuth, who is still an amateur, needs a much more grounded, serious, logical reason to butt his or her nose into what's probably a murder.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would, playing off that, I write a ton of cozies, and I had a Private Eye book come out this year, but I would call it Cozy Private Eye because the tone is very cozy. It's called Dead End Detective. It was published by Hallmark, but there wasn't quite as much as that suspension of reality, because I didn't have to have her trip over a dead body to have her be involved in the case. Like, this is her job. So, but another element of cozies that we have is kind of, and it's not in every cozy, so I don't want to make a blanket statement, but there's the character of the best friend or the sidekick in a cozy mystery or traditional mystery. So what role does that play in your books? Is it something you use? Is it something that you love? Or is it something that you've not used? So we can go ahead and start with Abby for this question.
I think best friends are so important in a cozy, because in cozies, you have to work through the clues. And it's no fun if it's all inner dialogue, for me at least. With the amateur sleuth, as Kylie said, you know, there's always an amateur sleuth. They don't really know what they're doing. They're not a private investigator and been trained maybe, or a police detective. So they have to be able to find clues, and to have someone to bounce that off of, I think is really important in a story. Plus, it lets the reader see the amateur sleuth's thinking process. You know, it's like, how did they deduce this? You know, get from this point A to point B. So I always include a best friend. I've read a couple cozies recently that the best friend was an animal, and I think that's cute and quaint. I haven't done anything like that, but I think that's good too. But you always, I think, need someone else to be there to help them out.
Kylie, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, the other thing a best friend is good for, whether it's a person or an animal, because I've done animals too, and also done ghosts. But like Abby said, you're helping the reader work through the process of the investigation, but you're also reminding the reader of what's happened before. Because let's face it, we don't all have the luxury of just sitting down and reading a book cover to cover. You put it down and you do a billion other things and you come back to it. So those conversations with the best friend, real or animal or ghost, can also serve to remind the reader of what has happened already in the story. And sometimes it reminds the writer of that too, because you forget and you need to go over it for yourself.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was like, it's also helpful for the writer as well. Bree, do you have anything to add?
Not really. I think they covered it. I always add a best friend because I think best friends are just super important. And a big part of cozy mysteries is the secondary characters, not just the best friend, but the setting, the town. It's a place and a community the reader wants to revisit. So, and not everybody has, this fantastic group of people that I'm blessed with to talk to about just anything. I think I've probably unloaded just randomly on all of you at any point, and you're just like, yeah, it's fine. I have for it, and it's great. But yeah, so if you don't have that, it's really nice to think, hey, it's out there, and there are people to listen to me, and I don't know, it's really beautiful. It's one of my favorite parts about writing it, is the the social dynamics.
I agree. Stephanie?
Well, maybe it's what I read or how I think, but I'm thinking I can probably find more best friend / sidekick / sounding boards in traditional amateur sleuth mysteries certainly than in cozies that I've written. So by traditional, I mean, I'm talking about Nero Wolfe and Archie Goodwin, right? Or Sherlock Holmes and Watson. Oh gosh, who else? Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings. These, for all the reasons we've been discussing, are sounding boards, and they serve to help the reader. It's like the reader's the third person in the room, right, while the sleuth and the sidekick talk it through. But what I like about the cozy world is in the small community, that second role can change from book to book, depending on what your plot is, right? And I like that because that has more possibility and different people in play that the reader can get to know. But I don't think it's a big gap, a big difference between traditionals and cozies. It's just, I don't know, maybe it's just, I say, it may just be what I read or I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree too. I think in all my series, there's been some sort of character that's a sounding board. But in my newest series, which is my Amish matchmaker one, which is right there, it's a huge part because my main character is Amish and she can't drive and she can't do a lot of different things that your amateur sleuth, and she also is not a rule breaker. So I needed someone to carry the lock picks and drive the car and do the, so I have these two senior citizens running around Amish country getting into trouble. And it's Millie, my Amish widow, who's 67, and their 67-year-old Lois, who's a 4-time divorcee and loves to gamble, and she's just like the best thing ever. I love writing her so much. No offense to Millie, but I almost like the sidekick better in this particular series. So I think that's the closest I have to like that traditional mystery where they really need each other to tell the story.
All right. Yeah, they really need each other to tell the story. And I think another purpose for that sidekick is it casts like, it highlights what can be eccentric about the actual sleuth. We, the reader, tend to think more like Watson. Like, well, what does that clue mean? Or what is, and it just showcases how brilliant the detective can be. In cozies, we feel our way along a little bit more than that, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Stephanie, I'll start off with you because you kind of alluded to it with your previous answer, just about the community and cozy mysteries. And when I say community, not just the people, but the setting. So what is it about settings for cozy that tend to be small towns? Not always, but they tend to be. Do you put your settings close to home, or do you go, well, you go to Italy, right? So you're farther away. So how did you make that decision? And how did you build that community?
And pardon me, I didn't hear.
And how did you build that community in that, far away place?
Okay, in a way, when I knew I wanted to, so the premise for my book that came out this past February, and book 2 is coming out in January. The premise is Nell Valenti, who's 29, is a professional cooking school designer. And she gets a mysterious call from a lawyer in Florence, Italy, who is trying to hire her at the request of a world famous Tuscan chef named Claudia Orlandini. Nell is very excited. Her life is a bit on hold, and so she goes to Cortona, Italy, which is in Tuscany, and sets up at the villa where he lives, a cooking school. So the community kind of wrote itself. I figured who else lives there, who else is on site, who comes to the cooking school from off the grounds of the villa. And so characters just popped up. I wanted to write an exotic, unfamiliar setting for cozy readers and make it feel very familiar, because it's just writing human beings just across the ocean. And there are a lot of the same problems and secrets, and of course, murder happens. So the community was, his sous chef, who's that? His son, who's that? What makes this villa operate? And Nell it becomes part of that little half dozen member family, basically, who are there all the time, and the stories shift from one book to the other.
That is very interesting that it wasn't too different than creating a cozy next door for you. I'll go to Bree next, because hers is we're getting closer to Ohio. So that's how I'll go ahead and answer this, ask this progression of questions. So Bree, your series is set in the Outer Banks, the one that you're speaking about tonight. So how did you pick that place, and same question, how did you build a community, which were different characters that are in that seaside town?
Okay, well, I picked the Outer Banks because it's someplace that I visit every other year. That sounds weird, but I've been married about 20 years, and we tend to vacation with his family. Then we vacation with my family, and we go back and forth. And whenever it's my family's turn, we go to the Outer Banks because my mom just wants to be at the ocean. That's it, leave her alone. She just wants to be there and sense it and hear it, and she's good. So year after year after year, I'm going there. I'm a writer. I'm writing cozies. I'm reading on the beach, and I'm thinking not about writing it. I'm thinking, what would it be like to live here? This must be amazing. And then it took years before I finally said, well, I could probably write it, And I did some research, and I didn't see a lot of other cozy series set there. So I thought it might be a place of interest. I thought it was, small towns are super popular with cozies, especially so that you have the opportunity to get to meet and get to know the people in the town, like Sesame Street. I always think of Sesame Street, who runs the general store, and who runs the this and the that. And so I just gave it a try. And then once you've kind of like what Shelley said, once you've decided where your story is going to be set, there's certain people that want to be there, and there's certain people who would absolutely walk into traffic before they'd be forced to live at someplace they can't catch a plane in 20 minutes, or so it just sort of developed from there. Who would live in the town, and why would they be there, and what makes the town quirky town tick?
The town quirk.
That works too.
Yeah. Kylie, how did the next two authors, I'll say, both have series set in the Cleveland area. But Kylie, you can go ahead and start. You have two Cleveland area set series.
Well, the Haunted Homicide, the one with the ghost in it, the Lucy Ness book, the answer to that goes along with what Bree and Stephanie said. It's set in Portage Path, Ohio, Akron, and it's set at a woman's club. So the community there is the woman's club. But I think the other thing you can do, like I said, Secrets of Bones, the Jazz Ramsey books are more traditional, but I think this applies to that too. These are set in Cleveland. And so automatically you're thinking, okay, that can't be a cozy community. The city's too big, there's too much going on. But you sort of focus that in because Jazz works at an all-girls school. So there's your community. You get to know the principal and the teachers and the maintenance guy and the lady who runs the cafeteria. And it's like Stephanie said, you sit back and you think, okay, who do we meet at school? Who are the people in your neighborhood? So I think, though most cozies are set in small towns, I think you can get away with the big city too, as long as you focus that big city down into a very small community.
You know, my first cozy series that was traditionally published was set in New Orleans in the Garden District. But it was, you know, she made pet clothing. So it was a community within this town, and it really didn't focus on, I mean, sometimes she went to the French Quarter, sometimes she was living her life in the city, but that closed community really revolved around these pet lovers that, you know, the pet pageant, the pet loving world, I guess, within New Orleans.
Yeah, that's a great point. Abby, your series is set in Chagrin Falls, correct? And go ahead, how would you answer that question?
So I always see place as a setting. I mean, setting as a character as well, especially in a cozy mystery, because that's all part of what, you know, going back to the first question you asked, what a cozy mystery is. It's, you know, usually in a small town, but it is a community where everyone knows each other. And that's pretty much how the amateur sleuth gets to figure it out. You know, she's got the gossip mill going for her, or her neighbors, or she knows the community, she knows where to go to look for answers. So in my book, here's mine, A Deadly Inside Scoop, I actually had to do all this horrific research, you know, checking out ice cream places. Such hard work. You know? But, you know, tedious and hard, but I did it. And when I got to Chagrin Falls, I thought, oh my gosh, this is the best place to put an ice cream store. There's actually 2 places there on the main street that sell ice cream. And it just seemed like the perfect place because it was, you know, it had a main street. The falls are there that dissects the town a little bit. And I actually hijacked one of the stores that sell ice cream, and I put my characters there. So it was just the perfect setting to go along with the story that I was writing. My other cozy mysteries are set in the South. You know, they say it's a Southern charm to add to your cozy mysteries. And so this is the first cozy that I've set in Cleveland. But I just don't think any place else would have fit this story. And plus, in this book, the day that she opens, there's a snowfall. And where else but in Cleveland, you know, how they say, wait a minute, the weather will change. Can you get snow in October? So it's just the perfect place for it.
Yeah, I agree. When I read your book and it was snowing like around Halloween, I was like, oh, I've been trick-or-treating. We're all in Northeast Ohio for frame of reference. So I've been trick-or-treating in the snow before. So for me, I was like, oh, she's, you know, she knows, obviously you've lived here most of your life, but she knows this area so well. And I think it gives some character too. For myself, setting is, like several of the others said, is so important. Is a character. It brings the people in. I think of my 2 Amish series that are crossover. So there's the Amish Matchmaker series and the Amish Candy Shop series. They're set in the same Amish town in Holmes County. And that was great because I just got to expand a community that I already created. And you get to see what's been interesting. You get to see characters that are in the previous series from another person's point of view. So there's one character, there's kind of an Amish bishop's wife who's not very well liked in general in the Candy Shop series. And then she's older, so she's friends with my characters that are older in the other series. So they just know her and know she's just kind of a curmudgeoning person. So they have a totally different perspective on her. So that's been fun. But the setting, I mean, obviously it has to be somewhere in Amish country to make this to make this work. So that's been fun to write a crossover series. You know, and something about cozies that I think we all think about, and I know there was actually a big study that was done at by one of our Sisters in Crime members about whether cozy readers or traditional mystery readers think characters are more important or plots more important. Do you read the book for the characters, like you're in it and you don't care what they're up to necessarily, or do you read it for that plot? So starting with you, Abby, I would ask, like, what's more important to you as an author, and what do you think's more important to your readers?
I would hope that both of them are. That's what I think. I like to put families in my stories, and usually, so when my besties, when I have that, I usually have like one person that's hilarious and that's, off the chart, and one, sort of like a Laurel and Hardy, if people still understand that reference kind of thing, or Rowan and Martin, one serious and one funny. So so I want them to enjoy the company of my characters, and that's why they come back. Haven't you ever read a book when you close it, you miss the people in the book, like they're real, and you think, oh, I'd love to see what happens to them next. So I want them to enjoy it. I kind of give a family feel with all my stories. It's usually a lot of relatives in my book. Aunts or uncles or parents or sisters, but then I want them to follow along the clues and enjoy the story. So I think that's important. I worry, I think, the most about creating the story. I worry about the clues and that there's no logic gaps and it all makes sense, and that an amateur really could, follow those clues and get to the end and solve the crime. So I think for me, the characters pretty much come naturally, especially when it's the second book or the third book. Those characters, how they'll react to whatever situation, and it's coming up with a different story and working through that story is the hard part. So I think that's hard for me sometimes to it's not hard, but that's the big thing, coming up with the story. But I hope they enjoy both in my books. So
yeah, I agree that can be the challenging part, to come up with definitely. And I think we've all written many cozies, so then, like, how many ways can you kill someone that's cozy? It gets harder. Exactly. Honestly. Stephanie, what would you add to that?
I love this question. I think because I can't really answer it. I think it's a balance. I love writing characters whose voices I absolutely hear, and I feel like they're interesting people and I want to spend time with them. But as mystery writers, there are exterior things that are going on that you really have to be mindful of. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy that part too. I think, sure, yeah, and I like the setting. I like all these other things that go into writing fiction, go into storytelling. I want to see all that. So I guess I try to bring all that to the page as a writer too. And for me, the writing of the plot is the hardest thing, but the plot comes out of the character. Right? Your character, she's afraid of the dark. There are things she's not going to want to look into, or it's going to be tense for her to investigate something that takes her in that situation. So I think you can create tension out of who the character is herself. I don't know. I think it's a balance. I think as a writer, as a reader, especially as a mystery writer, we want it all. We want to have those things in play in our work.
Right.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Kylie, what do you have anything to add to that?
What these smart ladies said. I don't think you can separate them.
Okay.
Right.
You've got your characters, you've got your plot, and they have to mesh and they have to work together. Right. I will say that I was very surprised. There was a BoucherCon, the World Mystery Conference in Cleveland, and I think it's about 9 years ago or so. It's been a while now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yesterday, but it wasn't. And we participated in a, what do you call that? Like a marketing survey, a roundtable kind of thing with readers. And I was absolutely stunned at the time when one of the readers said, I don't care about the plot. I just come back to see what Joe at the bakery's up to now, and whatever happened to so-and-so down at the corner who was going to get married to the town doctor. And so there obviously are readers who are very invested in our characters. But I think it has to go both ways. Like Stephanie said, you can have the greatest characters in the world, but they need a story to be in. So plot is important too, especially in a mystery.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Bree, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
Let me think. I was thinking as they were talking, some of the feedback I've gotten from my readers makes me think that it's kind of like it's a game to the readers a little bit, like you know, solving a crossword puzzle. So I think they really like that just challenge just to put it together. I think that that's fun. So it is like sitting down and playing a game, for lack of a, you know, that's what's coming to mind. It's playing this game and piecing it together and seeing if you know who it is before the end and if you're right, and that's fun. But at the same time, I think I'm one of those readers that would have said that, Kylie, that I would just go back. I'm a Stephanie Plum fan from Janet Ivanovic. I know she gets some flack from time to time because it's gone on, but I'll tell you what, if she puts a book out, I'm going to see what Stephanie's up to. I don't care if we just go get chicken and donuts and like cruise around the burg. I just want to be there with her. So yeah, so I guess when I sit down to write, I probably, even if it's not intentional, but I also think now that I'm working this out, you guys see my brain trying to smoke. I almost think it doesn't matter what the mystery is, you know, or what the game is, or who dies, or what the clues are. The point is more putting them together than, so I don't think that they're real hard on us that the mystery itself has to be some phenomenal, you know, I don't know, some kind of brilliant thing. It's more like the ride, I think.
Yeah, I think I care so much about the characters, but I think who the characters are inform that plot, because there's certain qualities that all amateur sleuths tend to have. You have to be inquisitive and independent and kind of spunky. So when you make that kind of person, maybe they are a baker and they think, well, I found a dead guy, I gotta solve it, you know, like, which I certainly wouldn't think, you know. So I think that's what I think it works well with Cozy, because that interesting character informs them getting into trouble, essentially, right? They're just getting into a bunch of trouble for about, you know, 270, 300 pages. I do want to remind our audience that you can type questions at the last 10 minutes or so. We'll have a Q&A time. We do have a couple more questions that we need to get to ourselves, but you can write questions at the bottom and click on that Q&A tab and type in your questions. I see a couple coming in, so I wanted to make sure that I reminded you of that. So something I find interesting about publishing are trends, and they tell us as authors, like, don't chase the trend, don't chase the trend, because by the time it's a trend, it's on its way out. And I think of, you know, when I started writing, it was like vampire books were, you know, with the Twilight series, and then there was all these other vampire books, and there's still readers for that, but they've, you know, they were like astronomical. You write a vampire book, you get on the New York Times bestseller list, you know, that kind of thing. And then same with like dystopia, the Hunger Games and things like that. And they're still out there, but they're not at the same level. And the thing that I think is interesting about cozy and traditional mystery, it's an even keel genre. You know, I never worry about not having an audience that maybe the people that those writers may worry about, like, oh, am I going to write, you know, the next Amish cozy and no one's going to be out there that wants to read it. So I find that really interesting. And what do you think is the constant that the last couple decades that cozies have been able to kind of hold this place of being wanted by readership? Like, what's its staying power when other things have like been like more of a flash in the pan kind of situation? So I'll start with Kylie if you wanted to try to tackle that question.
Well, I think that's an easy question to tackle because I think we've answered it. It's the appeal of the cozy, that little bit of fantasy, the puzzle. Was it Abby who said people like to work through this puzzle of the clues and come to the answer? It's the community. It's feeling invested in these peoples and these stories and the community from book to book. So I think it's easy to see why they stay in favor because they're very accessible. Most cozies, I would say, are not dense, heavy reading. It's a nice, easy read, a couple nights or a day on the beach, like if you're like Bree and you get to go to the beach.
Research.
For you. So I there's just a lot of things that recommend them because they're friendly and accessible. And yes, people die, but sometimes it has to be done.
Yeah, they die in a nice, cozy way.
A nice way. Right.
Of course. Stephanie, do you have anything to add to that?
I agree with Kylie that in a way we have answered around that question. So this is possibly a time to pull it together. I go back, I think, to a little bit of what I had said early on. Maybe it's because it predominates in how I think about it. There's a kind of stability in the cozy world. In the world we visit, yes, murder happens, but you can pretty much count on investigation and justice, right? That there's something, and that's a little predictable. There's something stable. There's something, I don't know if I want to say moral, but in that, the pursuit of justice, there seems to be an overriding morality. There isn't this great ambiguity at the heart of cozy mysteries that you can find and even has a certain appeal in, let's say, detective books, right? Where the mean streets, where we're reminded of how dark and unstable and often tragic life can be. It's a more stable vision of I'll just venture to say a bit of a more perfectible universe.
Yeah, Abby, do you have anything to add to that?
I think it's because I think in cozies, it's just normal everyday people. And I think the readers can see themselves. And they're entrepreneurs. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, work for themselves. Usually that's the kind of person the amateur sleuth is. And you don't have to have had an education in forensics or, be a police officer. It's just everyday kind of people who hang out, and people I think are naturally curious. Let something happen on your street. Everyone's on the porch, and everyone's telling each other what they saw and what they think. And that's what a cozy is. So I think that readers can really relate to that. It's sort of like seeing yourself in the book, and then you've got family and like we talked about, your best friends. It's who you hang out with. It's who you talk to. And who doesn't do that? When something happens and you call up someone, your sister, your best friend, your mom, and you tell them what's going on. So I think it's a cozy kind of feel, in our books. And it's just an everyday kind of thing, besides the murder. And I think that's why people like to read cozies. And that's why I think they won't go anywhere, because everyone wants to feel part, to contribute to something like that, and be a part of that, I think.
Bree?
I would agree. I think they're so popular, like long term, no matter what's changing in society or outside. People are kind of the same at the core, and I think that any generation, as the decades go by, you can always pick up a cozy, and you're going to find people that you can relate to. Maybe people you aspired to be, like entrepreneurs, and that dynamic, that best friend that everybody wants, the community that rallies when someone's hurt or in need. And it's a little, like idyllic, but I think we crave that too. I think it's why we watch so many Hallmark Christmas movies and watch you know, two different people live the same life over, we go back for that same feeling that there are good guys out there, that there are, that the bad guy, I think somebody said that too, the bad guy gets it, is always going to, the murder's solved, the bad guy's in jail, she's going to be okay. You know, all those things that we want to be real and aren't often, you know, like life's not fair. But in a cozy, you get the best of the people and you get to be part of that for a little while.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of those answers. I just think when I started writing cozies, it was because I was a reader of cozies. And I started reading them when like I was in middle school and then into high school. And I never wavered on what I wanted to write, because I like everything that the cozy has, but mostly I like the fact that I know what I'm getting. And I think that's what has kept the stability of the genre for the people that always come back. We all know of readers that go the first Tuesday of the month to Barnes and Noble or their indie bookstore and get all the cozies that came out. And we love those people. But those are our people. So those are the kind of people that are keeping this genre so stable, and we 100% appreciate it and love you guys. That brings me to what is coming next for you. We all have a few things coming next, so I want to give plenty of time to this particular question so you guys can pitch future books, because I think as an author, we're always thinking of the next book. The book I'm writing now is going to come out in 2022, for example. So it's, you know, my mind is not necessarily on Marshmallow Malice today. So if we go ahead and start with Bree, can you just give us, you know, and it could be cross genre too. Just let us know what's
okay.
What's
So
coming up.
my next release is in December, and it is the 5th book in the Seaside Cafe Mysteries. So it's Closely Harbored Secrets. This comes out December 29th. Then in January, I also write romantic suspense for Harlequin. And in January, March, April, not October, and November or something like that, I have romantic suspense titles coming out for Harlequin. I'm looking at book 6, the one I'm writing at right now in the Seaside Cafe series, will be out next summer, along with the 3rd book in my Apple Cider series. And next October is the 3rd Christmas Tree Farm book. So I've got, I think, like 11 books that release in 2021. So it's going to be a full, exciting, challenging year with lots of stories of survival.
Yeah. That's amazing. That is fantastic. Abby, what's coming up next for you?
Well, you know, I have 3 books to write, and I thought that was a lot, but after listening to Bree, mine is sort of like a vacation. So I have the 2nd book in the Ice Cream Mystery series. I don't have a copy of that. It's called A Game of Cones, and it will be out in March. And then I'll have These Are Secrets, but I have a new series that's coming out probably 2021. So I'm working on that. And then I did a crossover to women's fiction, and I have a book. It's slated to come out in probably late summer 2022, but I'm excited about that because it's kind of a switch over, but my heart is always in cozies. I know I'll be back, but it was just something new to try. So
absolutely.
I've got an anthology coming out. I'm an editor of an anthology.
Wow.
It's Crime Writers of Color. We did one. It's 19 or 20 authors. I think it's 20 authors. It's called In the Midnight Hour, and it's going to be published by Cricket Lane. And I kind of acted as agent for that. And I'm the editor and the manager of that. So that's a lot.
Oh my. Oh my goodness. Stephanie, what's on deck for you?
This won't take me too long. So this is book 1 in the series. I write one series. Book 2, Crime of the Ancient Marinara, comes out in January. I'm presently at the Villa. It's the second in the Nell series. I'm very fond of that book because there's a whole lot going on in it. And book 3 I'm writing now, and the working title is Sex and the Ziti. So so I'm in Tuscany, and I'm really having a good time. And hopefully I bring the kitchen to life and the characters beside. So that's me.
Okay, Kylie/Lucy.
Let me just say I am in awe of these people. I have 2 books coming out next year that I know of. I haven't heard a pub date on a third, so I'm not sure. The second book in the Haunted Mansion series is called Phantoms and Felonies, and that will be out in March. And then in May, the third Jazz Ramsey mystery will be out. It's called A Trail of Lies. I just finished yesterday. I just sent in, yay, yes, I know, the first book of a new series. That's the one that, I don't know, it could be out maybe late next year. It's called the Love is Murder series, and the first book in that series is called Death of a Red Hot Rancher.
I'm so excited for this book, you guys. Like,
I know, that
I'm
sounds
so excited.
And if you haven't guessed by the title of that book, it's set at a romance bookstore.
Oh, that's gonna be amazing. For me, my next book coming out is Courting Can Be Killer, and it's the second in the Amish Matchmaker mysteries. Next year, I have a few books coming out. In February, I have a new series beginning, and it's a farm to table mystery set in a cherry farm in Michigan. And the first book is called Farm to Trouble. And I will be continuing to write the Amish Matchmaker mysteries. I have the Lemon Drop Dad coming out in April, I believe. I'm sure there's others that I should be remembering. In addition to that, in the fall, I will have, I get asked a lot about my Magical Bookshop mysteries. I really thought the series was over, but the readers did not agree, which is kind of a nice thing, and put kind of a campaign on to get me to write a 5th one. So I'm writing that actually right now. It's going to come out sometime in the winter, so it might be in 2022. And then I have a secret project that I'm really excited about, and I just got the contract, but I'm a little superstitious, so I'm not going to say what it is till everybody agrees on the contract, and that can take a while.
Yeah.
But so watch my Facebook page. I'm sure I will announce it there. We all are on social media. I think Facebook is probably where you can find us the easiest. If you search our names, we should come up. So definitely fan us. We love that. Yeah. So we're going to get to some of our readers' questions who are here. So anyone that sent us a question, thank you so much for, putting that in. We really appreciate it. So let me scooch my window over so I can read these without squinting. So our first question is from one of our attendees, and since not all of us will have the answer for this, maybe so you can raise your hand if it applies to you, but have any of you written a cozy without a murder? So it's a different type of mystery.
Is there such a thing?
I know. I actually have. So Kensington, for my Amish Candy Shop series, did like a novella set, like ebook only. And I call it The Mysteries Between the Murders, because I felt like I couldn't kill someone properly in 15,000 words and solve their murder. So I think the last one that most recently came out, which is one I'll probably remember the best, is Candy Cane Crime, that came out last month. And it was like a secret admirer mystery. There was someone like writing like love notes through a candy cane exchange at Christmas, and they had to, this Amish girl had to figure out who it was. So no one died. It's just a cute mystery where people could revisit a place that they already loved. So that, did anyone else, everyone else, just straight up killers all across
Yeah,
the
straight
board?
up killer.
Okay. And that's totally acceptable. This was my first non-killer. So it's much more common to kill people in mysteries. So our next question, and I'll start with you, Abby. What are you currently reading? Our readers want to know that.
I read about 2 or 3 books at a time when I'm reading a book. So I'm reading some women's fiction, and I'm also reading a couple cozies. And right now I'm reading Jennifer Chow's Mimi Lee Finds a Clue. And it's a cute little, it's one of the stories that I was saying that it has a talking animal in it. So that's her, sounding board. And I'm also reading The Vanishing Half by Bree Bennett. So those are 2 books I'm reading right now.
Yeah. Bree, what are you reading right now?
I am reading The Trouble with Hating You, and I can't think off the top of my head who it is. It's really good. I've been into romantic comedy. I think, again, because this year has been so, I've been looking for things to make me laugh, and I've read probably 25 romantic comedies in the last 6 months. And, they're on the rise. They're everywhere, probably for the same reason. They're in demand, and they're hilarious. So no one dies, but I get that same romance zing I like in the cozies. So
yeah. Stephanie, what are you reading?
Well, I pretty much read audiobooks. To me, it's like a performance. And when you find a series you love that I've actually read in book form, you pair that with a great narrator, I just find that wonderful. I spend, like the rest of us, so much time in front of the computer all day. I like to be read to. And pretty much, as I said before, well, non-mystery, the Jeeves and Bertie Wooster stories bring me out of sad moods, and I just love them. So I have one going now, the mating season. And the Rex Stout Nero Wolfe series, I just keep cycling through them. Archie Goodwin is my favorite character in mystery fiction. A couple months ago it was the Agatha Christie Poirot series, and I go through them. So I just keep coming back to what I've already read, because I don't remember the plots to begin with, and there's always something rich there for me.
Absolutely. Kylie, what have you been reading lately?
I have to admit, shamefacedly, nothing, because as I mentioned, I just finished a book.
Yeah.
And it's been crazy. So I don't usually read fiction when I'm writing. I'll read nonfiction. But now that the book's done and I have a little break, I'll find something.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like when I'm on a hard deadline, I don't read as much as I usually do. So it's kind of like my reward. You're like, oh, you finished this stupid book that you get to that point when you're just like, book die, like you just want it over.
How long have I been writing this same?
I know, right? So I get to that point, I'm like, you can read a fun book. Like that's what I tell myself, you can read a fun book. Right now I am currently listening on Audible to Abby's book, and I am loving it. It is adorable.
Thank you.
And it's been a great, I'm building a house right now with my husband. So it's something I can do while, waiting for a contractor in a car. So that's really been nice for me. And I've enjoyed it. And also I've been listening to Vivian Chen's books as well. And she's a member of our Sisters of Crime chapter here in Northeast Ohio. And we all love her and highly recommend that you check out her books. I think you'll definitely enjoy them, especially they have an amazing Ohio setting. So definitely check those out. All right, let's see. we got some nice compliments that people were saying the panel's great. So we love to see that. Someone asked, and we'll just do a couple more questions because I want to be mindful of your guys' time. We're running over a little bit already. Someone asked, what are the hard, fast rules of cozies? So they wrote in parentheses, like never harm a pet, violence off scene. Is there anything else you would add to that, Kylie?
I think we mentioned them. No children or pets get harmed.
Don't hurt the children or pets.
No strong language, no graphic violence, no graphic sex. Anybody else think of anything?
Yeah, go ahead and jump in. If you have
Always
any-
an amateur sleuth. That's about it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Highly
You say
covered it.
language. The language is always PG usually,
Yeah.
for the most part.
Absolutely. Okay, I'll go ahead. Maybe you can get to, there's only 2 other questions, so we'll try to get to them for those people that wrote them. So one question is, did you always aspire to be a writer from an early age? Was there another career that you were more focused at as a younger person, or is it the writer lane? For myself, I've always wanted to be a writer. I always wanted to be a cozy mystery writer, but I know we don't all have that same answer. So Stephanie, if you wanted to jump off.
I think that was the through line in my life, was writing, and I was writing from a very early age. And I was sort of seduced by this or that along the way. I had a bit of an academic career. I grew up in a theater family. I had to sort all that out and just kind of clear the decks and keep doing what brought me the greatest joy, and that's always writing. I thought I was going to be the next, what's her name, Sarah Paretsky with the Female Private Eye, and that didn't work out. And I find the older I get, I like the what's known about the cozy world, even as you step into it. So that's what I like to read. That's what I like to write. And I've always been a writer.
Yeah. Bree, has that been the case for you?
No, I have my degrees in psychology. I was going to be a counselor specifically for women, young girls, etc. But life happened, and I got pulled out of the career world to raise kids. And I was fortunate enough to be able to stay home while we raised it. We juggled some things and we made it work. And but by the time the 3rd kid came and nobody knew my name, I was really aggravated because I used to be a person like on my own and also a parent, but somewhere along the line, I quit existing, and it kind of peeved me off. And then that was around when Twilight came out. Stephanie Meyer was on Oprah and she said, "Oh, I'm not a writer. I just, I'm a stay-at-home mom of 3. And I thought, I am a stay-at-home mom of 3. So I think I'd always been creative, but I'd never written anything longer than like a grocery list. But I Googled, how do I write a book? And I found most of y'all up at the Sisters in Crime. And I just found out that, I love it. I can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah. Kylie, what about you? Has it always been the dream?
Writing has been, I never thought about being a fiction writer. I actually started my writing life nonfiction, journalism and corporate communications, that kind of thing. And I actually had this little idea in my head that I'd write a children's book, but then I came to my senses because what do I know about children's books? And just had an idea. The very first book I published back in the Stone Ages was a historical romance. And I didn't even know what a historical romance was. I just had an idea for a story that I started writing. And the more I researched it, I found out that was what the market was calling historical romance. And the rest is history.
Absolutely. And Abby, what about you?
Well, I want to be an actress and I want to be a doctor, but I ended up being a lawyer. So I don't know that I ever knew what I wanted to do. I have a degree, a bachelor's in economics. I have a master's in public administration, then I have the JD. So, I've been just like everywhere. But I never thought about being a writer. It sort of came to me that I wrote well. I was a good writer when I was probably in my late 20s after being married and having kids. And I wrote a letter about something, a complaint. And I got so many compliments on that, but it still never clicked. Hey, you could be a writer. So it just kind of fell on me. I got sick and I was nearly bedridden and I didn't have anything to do. So I decided to write. And it actually is the longest thing I have stuck with. So it must be something.
It's the right, it's the right one.
Yeah, I finally got to the right one and I'm happy. So, and plus I'm too old to start all over and do something different.
Start a seventh career or something like that.
Exactly.
Well, our last question is from a reader. I think they're aspiring writer. So they ask, did you enjoy immediate success and how did you deal with rejection? I would also add to that, I think it would be a nice note to add at the end, what you can tell someone that's watching this, hoping to aspire to write mystery. What would your advice to that person be?
Run now while you.
Kylie says, run as fast as you can. So we'll go ahead and start. Stephanie, what would you say about your journey to this place and what's your advice?
I sold my first story just as I was graduating from college. I sold it was a story about F. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda, his wife, and they were living in Paris. And I sold it to what was then called We Magazine, and it was a Playboy subsidiary. The money they gave me, and I thought my career was launched. I can't tell you how many times over the last umpteen years I thought my career is launched. And the square one seems to, it seems to be fly paper or something, it's really hard to get off that. They ended up not publishing the story, although they didn't ask for the money back. And it took me a while through graduate school to realize I wanted to write detective stories. And then, as I've said many times when I'm asked that question, from the time I started writing a mystery novel to the time I got a contract was 20 years. This is like biblical proportions or something, this is 20 years. And it's addresses, what would you tell writers? Be prepared that it's not going to be what you think it is. Be prepared, it may be wonderful in different ways. It's going to be hard work in ways you can't imagine. It will be maddening. But even so, I have always met really good people who are writers and who are editors and who are copy editors and publicists. Everyone's looking to bring good writing into the world. So it's just know who you are because it's a tough row. And if there's something easier that you do well, you may want to think about it.
If there's something easier that catches your attention, don't run away to that one. Bree, how did you get to where you are now? You told us the story about Twilight and how you started writing, but since you first got published, and what would you tell that person that wants to break in?
Well, I will say of all the authors all the writers I know, and I've only been doing this for about 10 years, or 12, maybe since I opened Google and said, like, how do I write a book? It might have been 11 or 12 years, but everybody I know that's a writer, they couldn't quit if you took all their writing utensils away from them, they'd scratch it in the ground. I've quit writing so many times, forever, and then I find myself writing fan fiction or something else because I feel like once we've unleashed it, we all belong on that DSM-5 personality disorder scale together. We can't quit. We're stuck here, so we might as well make the best of it. So if you're a writer, I'm really sorry. But we're your people and we're here for you. And there's so many of us out there and we're the nicest people ever, if a little odd, but willing to, help however we can. But it's not easy because there's so many of us. There's so many of us and so many really good writers that they can be very, very picky, and they really, really are. And so it might not be your story, it might not be your writing, it might be the trend, it might be now what's selling, because ultimately it's a business. So something you can't sell today might make you a big advance 10 years from now, or there's a lot of chance. So I guess the upside is the people. The writers are fantastic, and so you're stuck in a good crowd.
Yeah. Abby, what would you answer that question with?
So writing has been kind of easy for me. As I said, I was sick and I was in a bed. I just started writing, and I self-published. And I self-published I put up my first book in June of 2013. And I remember in June, I didn't sell any books. July, I didn't sell any books. August, I sold 5. And then in September, I sold 522. So I started, doing well in that. And then I turned around, and to promote my self-published book, I went to a small press. They were doing promotions, and they asked to publish me. So I got into the publishing world kind of easy as well, the traditional publishing world. And then once my book was advertised, it wasn't out yet, an agent contacted me and asked to be my agent. So I've had a pretty easy time of it. And I know that my story isn't typical, but in light of that, I would say to you, hang in there. If this is what you want to do, then hang in there. It may take a while, as some people were saying, or it may come quickly. You don't know, but you won't ever know if you don't try, right? So write your book, find your agent. Writing community, like Bree said, I think is so important, because it helps to you enjoy other people's successes, and it makes you work harder. It motivates you, and it's someone there always to have your back. So I always tell people those two things: find your writing community and hang in there. It'll come. Just keep trying.
Absolutely. Kylie,
Well,
you've had a long career.
I have, and I'm not sure if that's good or bad.
It's good.
It's almost 30 years. But one of the things you said with that question was something about immediate success.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm talking to the person who wrote that question.
Okay. Talking to you.
We're talking right now. First, you need to decide what you think immediate success is. You think immediate success is a $500,000 advance, then your heart's going to get broken. Is immediate success to you writing a chapter, finishing a book, finding an agent, sending in a book to a publisher and getting rejected, because it's going to happen? It's a squirmy thing. And success all depends on what you think of as success. But if you're looking for pie in the sky success in a very tough business, you're not going to be happy. So I think you need to be very practical. I think, as Stephanie has heard me say too many times, this is a business.
Yeah.
And if you're there saying, I'll just sit and wait for the words to come to me and I'll be inspired, it's hard work. It's tough work. As Bree mentioned, there's a billion of us out there. So decide what your version of success is and go for it. But know that you've got to be real practical about it too. I'm the downer writer, so that's my downer message.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's a downer, because it's something. When I was a young writer, and I had my first agent when I was 23 years old, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I didn't end up staying with that agent because I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and she wasn't a great agent. The one I have now is phenomenal, in case she's watching and she knows it. But if someone had told me that, I think it would have been such great advice to receive, because my goal ultimately for me, what my gauge of success was to have my book at the library. I didn't really care what, I didn't even think in terms of like advance, like my first advance was like $1,000, and I thought I was like super rich, and so I think that's a great point, and it would have been helpful. And I think a place that, if you're looking for this kind of advice and you want to write mystery, you should really check out Sisters in Crime. It's an amazing organization. When I was a young author and I didn't know what I was doing, our Northeast chapter, for some kind of mystery, kind of formed right when I had my first book contract. It was Kylie and Stephanie were, the kind of the people pushing it forward, and I found them, and like, this organization has changed my life. I wouldn't have the career now if I didn't have my tribe and my group and the people that knew the business. And I would tell, I'll tell Kylie like a crazy story, and she always has something to top it. So it's kind of it's kind of comforting. You're like, oh, this horrible thing happened to me. But she's like, wait a second, I got you. I got something.
My dear.
So I think you need that. So you need to find your group. That was my advice for you is to find, and if you don't write mystery, find your genre, find your organization, whatever it is, because you need those people. Your friends and family love you. They don't understand you. Like, they don't understand why it's, you just spent, in my case, I write on my bed, and I might write for 11 hours and I look like I got hit by a car. Like, I'm just a hot mess. And my poor husband is like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I wrote, 20 pages, something like that. So they don't understand it. Your tribe will understand it and why you have to do it. So that would be my advice. And just to end, we appreciate you so much.
Yes.
Taking the time out of
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Out of your busy schedules to pop on and watch this event with us. And we hope to be at the Buckeye Book Fair next year with you. So that's our goal. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.